So recently on VR I've started playing a small little game called Demeo. Now when I first started playing it I was like, oh cool, it's like Dungeons and Dragons except electronic I guess. Actually it's kind of accurate to be honest, but it's so much more than that. I am obsessed with this game at the moment. I play it almost every night because it's the only game I can play in bed and I'm lazy. Also I'm a crab, so I guess I can't really operate the controllers. So how do I play Demeo? That's a very interesting question. What I do is I get a team of crabs and use them as hands. It's a very complicated way of answering that. So Demeo is fantastic. There's 4 classes at the moment. I think they're adding more, possibly, but I don't know what they are yet, so I'll maybe make a review on them once they come out. So for now, I'm going to do the game as a whole, and then probably go through all the characters and stuff as well, so, actually, I'll start with the characters.
Listen here, Hagrid, you fat oaf! I'm not a fucking wizard!
So first up we have the Wizard. So the Wizard is actually the only male character I think, because no one knows the gender of the assassin, but I'm pretty sure it's a woman. So he's a support class. His main role is stunning enemies that will insta-kill his friends and crowd control, basically. It's really difficult to describe how all the characters work, but they've been made so fantastically. Like, none of them feel incredibly powerful. I mean, the rogue seems a bit overpowered at times, with him being able to go into stealth for 3 rounds and then only taking 1 round to recharge it. I feel like they probably need to nerf that a little bit, but it fits his role well enough anyway. So the main downside the Wizard has is that he's terrible in one-on-one combat. He only does 2 damage a hit, which is by far the least out of all the other characters, who do like 3, and I think the rogue can do 5 because he can backstab people, which means that he is at a complete disadvantage if he's fighting one big boy, but he's at a real advantage if he's fighting a lot of small little boys, because he has an awful lot of AoE attacks. Some of his common ones are Fireball, which is incredibly powerful in groups of enemies, and Ice, which doesn't do that much damage but freezes an entire, I think it's like a 4x4 square of people. So they're very powerful spells. So the Wizard is a fantastic support class against small little enemies, but he needs someone else to take on the big guys for him, and that's where this person comes in.
That's a tank!
So this, I don't know what their actual name is. It's a Paladin. It heals people. The Paladin is the only person who can summon the healing statues that heal you every go. They can spawn cannons, which no one else can. And they're essentially a melee class. They don't really have that many ranged attacks, but they're incredibly strong at 1v1ing people because they can rejuvenate their shield. So essentially they have a 5 hit point health potion on command. So the Paladin's upside is that they're incredibly strong and can do quite a lot of damage, but they only really have one ability that can take out a group of people. And it's not that strong because you have to be in the middle of them to perform it. He also has no real way of attacking people from range. He's got, I think, is it 1 ranged attack and that's it? So the Paladin is very strong by himself, but the problem is he has no real way of getting to the enemies or defending himself from the enemies if they all decide to gang up on him. Because the Paladin has to go into the frying pan to actually do any damage, he's at a really big risk of dying if he's not being supported by...
We have over 1,000 dogs.
So this is the Archer. Everyone loves the Archer. The Archer is fantastic. The Archer does an awful lot of damage. That's a good point. What's the downside of the Ranger? Actually, I think the Ranger is one of the only ones that doesn't have a downside. Does quite a lot of damage, has melee and ranged attacks. The Ranger only really has 1 attack that can deal damage to a group of people, which means that, again, they have to rely on the Wizard. But the Ranger has so much range that you can basically support anyone from anywhere. So a good Ranger will position themselves overlooking half of the map and just pepper people while their friends try and take them out. The Ranger is an extremely well-made support class. They're also really good for summoning doggos and like spiders and stuff. So essentially, while you're sitting there helping your friends are going and getting cards and experience, which allows you to spawn little enemies, well, I guess allies, that go and help them. So essentially, you can build an army with this character, which makes them probably one of my favorite. I think it's my favorite character, to be honest. In fact, I think the Archer's the only person that doesn't have any kind of defensive spells. So the Paladin can heal himself the thief can go invisible, and the wizard has a spell that blocks a bit of damage, but from what I can remember, other than lore, which technically it doesn't really do the same thing. So the archer's main downside is that they have no defensive capabilities, but they've got an awful lot of offensive capabilities.
Surprise! Button 6, button 6, button 6,
And the last one is the thief, or the assassin. I'm not too sure about the actual names. So this is basically the forward scout person. So they do an extreme amount of damage from behind, and they also have stealth, which allows them to get there. So the idea with thief is you can go around scouting enemies out and not attacking, and you can throw little poison bombs down so that when they come to follow you, they'll get damaged before they actually meet. They're essentially, it's like the starter of like a meal, for example. So when you get down there, you can damage them all with poison, and by the time they actually reach the main course, which is the rest of your team, they're already really damaged and poisoned. Pair that with the fact that if you manage to get behind the enemies, you can do, I think it's 5 damage a hit instead of 3. I think it's an extra 2 damage on all of your cards. It makes the thief an extremely dangerous combat card. The only thing that can really happen to the thief is that you run out of stealth in the middle of your journey through a bunch of enemies, basically. But if you're a half-decent thief, I'm probably guessing that's not going to happen to you.
Get the fuck out of my room! I'm playing
Dungeons and Dragons XD.
So now I'll get on to the gameplay and the maps, and I think that's pretty much what I'll talk about in this review. I would like to point out before we continue, I've done an awful job of explaining the characters, because I'm kind of new to the review process, so I don't really have much of a brain. But the characters are so well made. If you have a Quest, or if you have a VR headset and have not played Demeo, play Demeo. It's so fucking good. Every turn you take for the gameplay, you have to roll the dice whenever you're attacking someone, which means that you can crit them, or you can miss them. So you will make an amazing plan, only for the execution to go wrong because you missed, and then the enemies get through your poison without you poisoning them properly, and like everything goes wrong. So it adds a lot of randomness to your plans, which I quite like a lot. Another good thing, the enemies are actually RNG. In fact, well, there's 3 maps technically. So you get one story at the moment. They're releasing another one at the end of the month, apparently. And they're going to release a bunch more, but at the moment there's only the Elven Queen. So you've got the first floor, which is a little bit smaller than the second floor, and then the third floor with the final boss. Now the final boss is unfortunately very weak, so I hope they buff her, because she's just an absolute joke at the moment. She's got 60 health, which is nothing by the end of the game. It needs to be like 200, or hell, even 300. Just make her a tank. I want to have more trouble fighting her than I do fighting the spider eggs. Please. So because there's only a couple of maps, the game could get quite boring if it was the same enemies over and over again, but luckily it's not. It's very RNG. We opened a door and the entire map was covered with small enemies like spiders and shit. And we didn't have a wizard because you don't necessarily have to have one of each character. I think we had like 2 assassins, a ranger, and a paladin. So we had no one to take out groups of enemies, and we just got swarmed to death by an entire room full of people. It was ridiculous. I think we still made it out of there though, because poison's good. So at the moment, because there's only one map, I thought, oh, I'm guessing people get bored of playing this eventually. No, not really. Because the RNG, it's similar to Left 4 Dead 2, where you never really get bored of playing it because things change every time. It takes about, maybe an hour to play a game through if you take a while. So anywhere from half an hour to an hour, depending on how quickly you move through. So at the start of every game, you have to find a key to open this exit, and you don't know where the key or the exit is. But you do know where they could be, so you've got like 6 areas of interest. So they'll either be this potion that heals everyone, which is quite good, so it's like a heal station, a chest, which every time you open a chest it gives you a card, which is basically like an ability, but you can only use that ability once, and then the card's gone.
Everyone has Uno, dipshit. It came free with your fucking Xbox.
So each different class has different abilities. For example, the wizard has a bunch of AoE effects like ice and fire, and they can also summon elementals. The rangers can fire arrows, fire one really big arrow that poisons them, summon dogs, that kind of thing. The assassin, I'd that's a good point. I haven't really played Assassin a whole lot. What kind of cards do they get? I don't think the Assassins can summon anything, but I believe that the Assassins just kind of get cards that do damage to people. It's a very good question. I don't know much about the Assassin, I haven't really played them. And the Paladin gets a bunch of different melee-based cards, so they get a card that attacks one person for quite a lot with their sword. They have like a surround swishy one where they attack a bunch of enemies around them. So yeah, you get all kinds of different cards. You get like potions as well, healing potions, potions that buff your health, potions that make you faster, which means you can move more per turn, something that gives you 3 turns per go instead of 2 turns per go, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of randomness to that, and you're not even guaranteed to see some cards in a playthrough. So all of this combined really makes the experience a lot more enjoyable, because it means that no 2 playthroughs are ever going to be the same.
So here's this giant enemy crab.
So there are really big enemies and there are really small enemies. Some of the small enemies don't really do anything to you. For example, some of them have I think almost every single enemy, apart from like the goblins, are unique in a certain way. For example, spiders are immune to absolutely everything for some reason. Slimes poison you when they hit you. Little hounds, like little doggos, you can feed them bones, which is just a random card that doesn't do anything else, and you can tame them, and they'll fight for you. And then you have dog pets, and they'll fight for you until the end of the game, like until you've killed the boss. It's fantastic. So this is just a brief overview of Demeo. Demeo is a fantastic game. If you haven't played it, absolutely go play it. It is so good. I'm not sure if I'll do like an out of 10 thing. I'd probably give it an 8 though. I'd probably give it more like a 9 if it had a bunch more maps. But it's a very relaxing game as well. Like, especially if you had friends to play it with. You can just sit down, relax, talk to your mates, throw a bunch of dice around, shit yourself when the big slime comes and eats your wizard. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the only games that you can just kind of chill out and play, as opposed to all the fast-paced games that people think VR players want. Like, I just want to be able to sit on my ass, play a board game with a bunch of people, and laugh at the 12-year-old who doesn't know what they're doing. This game is perfect for that. So hey, if nothing else, get Demeo. It allows you to bully the noobs.